Okay.
So firstly, I mean, amazing film. I really did enjoy. I mean, enjoy is not the word for it, really, but it really enlightened me and made me think a lot about the whole situation out there. And she seems like an amazing person. Is it Obi? Seems amazing. And how did you first sort of get involved with her and first discover her story and her footage?
Well, I was approached and asked if I would meet up with Obi by the production company because she had this treasure of footage. She was outside of Syria at that point, had lived just on the other side of the border in Turkey for a bit more than a year. And I went there and we started talking about all her experiences, all her stories, wrote hundreds of pages of notes on that and went through the footage. And through that we constantly had a mutual agreement that if it didn't feel right, then we could go our separate ways. If we felt like we were establishing a language for the film that felt right, then we would make the film.
And what was it like when you sort of first went through that footage? I mean, it must have been quite shocking and surprising, some of the stuff that you uncovered. How did you feel sort of looking through it?
Well, I think the nature of the footage, because it was so fragmented, made me feel all kinds of things. One moment you're on a beach and friends hanging out and singing doors. The next moment you're in a demonstration and people die. So it was a range of emotions. I was especially struck with a lot of the meetings where people tell their own stories, and we really had this amazing quality in the footage that Obi she'd been there, she'd been everywhere, and she runs randomly into people and has interesting conversations with them, and that quality was important to protect and bring out.
I mean, from watching the footage and watching the documentary, you get the impression that she's just an amazing person and she's so brave, the way she gets herself in these situations, and just her way of telling the story of what she's filmed seems quite remarkable. How would you kind of describe her as a person?
Well, first of all, nuts, because I would probably have run out of Syria much faster than she did. She was definitely extremely brave in the way that she kept going deeper and deeper into front lines and dangerous situations. She had no expectation to survive this. She lost a lot of friends and we're basically at a point where survival was not considered a reality. It was just how far am I going to go down this road until I die. And I think leaving Syria, the first while was her moving from the dead to the living, also in her own mind, like realizing that there's a life ahead of me.
I mean, I imagine it's quite traumatic, sort of reliving this and sort of watching it back and stuff. Has she actually seen the finished film? What's her reaction to seeing these things back?
Well, it was, first of all, the whole process was it was very important that we could have a film that Obi could embrace in the end. And not just Obi, but also the community of friends around her. So it was a very collaborative process. And I think it was astounding yesterday to be standing in the cinema here in Venice and people getting up in the cinema and me standing next to Obeda and see her experience her own story with an audience, and that we've gotten to this point where she could actually stand up and receive that recognition. There are many moments where I thought we would never get to this point, and the first time I saw a picture of her dead friend that she showed me, she broke down for an entire day. Now she has the strength to stand up in front of 500 people and share this experience. So it's quite remarkable for me.
Definitely. I mean, the film talks a lot about the camera being sort of more powerful than a weapon. Do you still think that's the case? I mean, because obviously the camera can shed light on things, but it can also be used for the opposite reasons, to confuse and to desensitize. Do you think how do you think the camera is in that regard related to a weapon?
Well, I think the camera is tricky, and I think the camera is being used as a weapon in this conflict, and it's not only portraying reality, it's shaping reality, very much so. We see it concretely in the film, where we see rebels shooting bazookas for the sake of the camera, so they can get money and attention in media. So camera has a very active role that we need to understand deeper, and both how it desensitivizes people, as you say, but also how it fuels conflict. And a lot of the conflict in Syria is connected to a competition over narrative, which narrative is going to win. And to an extent you could say that the Assad regime's narrative, where they wanted to portray the revolution as the regime against radical terrorists, that they have succeeded making that narrative a reality, but that was not the reality in the beginning at all. So yeah, the camera plays a very active role in it.
And how important do you think it is to tell kind of this side of the story, where you've got, there's so many sort of refugees around the world at the moment that seem to be being dehumanized in a lot of the press and stuff. I think that's a lot to do with that you only get to see the news side of things with, the actual armies fighting. You don't really see these true stories. So how important is it to get these stories of normal people's lives out there?
Well, very important. It's very important to understand that what the people sitting in a dinghy crossing the Mediterranean, what this person is fleeing from, what's the life that this person had, what kind of person are we talking about. And what was wonderful for me seeing the footage for the first time was to see that it was a group of friends that were totally like my own friends. There was Rabea, who likes to play the drums and looks a bit like Bob Marley and likes to smoke a joint. And there's Lulu, who is a breath of fresh air, and it was so recognizable, and it was just very affirming, because we see so little that feels like that when we look at Syria. I mean, when you look at pictures of ISIS, it feels so far away from our own reality, and we don't, through the media, get to a deeper understanding of why that was created and how it was created. So it just brings us far away from each other. And if your neighbor is someone you know, you're far more likely to help that person if the person is in need. And if we understand deeper on a human level and feel on a human level the experience that Syrians have gone through and is going through, I also hope and believe that we are more likely to act.
I also think, because one of the strongest moments for me was where you have the child that's kind of chanting, and he's chanting the wrong thing. He starts chanting for the extremists rather than what he should be chanting, and it gets told off. But that's kind of, how do you sort of solve that problem? Because with the extremists, you've got people follow this kind of ideology almost because they've got the rhetoric and they've got this passion, and sometimes people will just go with that. So how do you solve this kind of problem? Because they can't see anyone else helping them, really.
Well, I think it's brilliant scene because it shows the confusion. This guy says, I want an Islamic state, and he's carrying a sign that says, I want a civil state. And then when someone confronts him and says, well, what do you want? Oh, I don't know, I got confused. I just wanted to be on camera. And I think that these opinions connected to radical Islam, for example, are not that deep-rooted in society, and people are much more following whoever can provide them with security or daily bread than the deep-rooted political opinions. And that's in a situation of war. Then survival is your key motive. And clearly these movements like Jabhat al-Nusra or ISIS have been the ones that could provide that, at least for a while. So I think there's huge potential in Syrian society for a different type of political situation. It's just not what we're seeing at the moment.
And just lastly, what would you say is the biggest sort of misconception about Syria that you've sort of discovered that people have, and what would you like people to learn from your documentary?
Well, I think we've seen a lot from Syria, and it's been over the news for years now. But it's been a flow of images that doesn't really bring deeper understanding. It's more desensitizing than anything. So for me, it's what documentary can offer is depth into understanding the conflicts on a human level, much stronger, and that's number one. And then I think that we also how can I describe it? Today we need to consider very carefully if we can really live with a situation where the Assad regime, with the kinds of crimes they've committed, can stay in power for the future, and it seems like that's the situation that's going to happen now, and that's very discomforting.
Yeah, I mean, so beside making, people making documentaries, how can the normal person kind of help this situation?
Well, I think the normal person can do a load of things. There are refugees everywhere. They could use all kinds of help. You can try to change people's opinions. Now we see a right-wing movement in Europe related a lot to this refugee crisis. Go and act on that, change people's opinions, make a difference. There are ways you can give money for refugees that the UN is not getting nearly the funding that they need to help people in the areas close to Syria. So there's a load of things we can do, and it's just about doing it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and hopefully your documentary will inspire people to do just that. So,
I hope so.
Thank you very much. Great to speak to you. Cheers.
Thanks.
Taking the chats than I am too. I mean, it's really in terms of your role in forming the narrative and in a very positive way, return to Homs, which I don't know if you saw. I mean, and the footage is of much better quality as well, but trying to make sense of the narrative is just in a role in that. And yeah.
How long do you expect it to be in the end?
This interview?
Yeah. Those hard drives was 300 hours of footage. So I was approached and asked if I could help, try to first investigate whether this could become a movie. Could we find a common hundreds of pages, and through that we started a process of sort of editing that and me giving proposals. Could we tell the story like this? Could we take this story? Does this feel
It's okay, you can just be really relaxed about your film. Well, congratulations on being in Venice.
Thank you.
Which I think is still the best film festival in the world. Definitely a cinephile festival.
Place in the world.
It is amazing, isn't it? And can you just tell me?
So we started a conversation basically together. I listened to hours of stories, and there were so many stories. I dubbed her the fountain. Yeah.
Wow, that would be fun.
And
yes, I heard it was nice today. Good festival. Okay, yeah.